Well, this is my first time back into the garden, I would say, in probably a couple of months. It's December 13th, and I checked it yesterday, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's not growing like gangbusters, but it is still growing. So I'm just going to fill up this watering can right now and give it a little bit of water because everything is still under a hoop. It's the pumpkin graveyard. The critters make meals out of them. Sometimes, if they're not too rotted. So it's going to be 60 degrees today. It's nice out right now. Let me show you something new that I'm doing here. And it's a work in progress. You see this mound right here? This is called Hugelkulture. And I'm sure you've heard of it before. And if you haven't, what you do is you dig a trench, which I didn't have to do because I had raised beds prior to this. And I just put, the method is to put a rotting log under there. Make sure it's not black locust. Like a softwood, like pine, is ideal. And I didn't have that, so I just used a really rotted piece of maple. So on top of that, you put some yard scraps from the plants that you cut down in the fall. And we had some wood chips because, see over there? We had to cut down one of the trees. It was leaning towards the house. So we had a ton of wood chips from that, and that's what's right here. And then you cover the whole thing with dirt. And I'm not quite finished with that. And that's why the shovel is still out here. But I'm going to try it. And these are rather small. Sometimes they can be quite large. But these are manageable for me. So that's Hugelkulture. And they look like a terrible mess. But the idea is that the wood will rot. And all the clippings from the garden and the shavings will rot underneath. And it creates heat. So I guess it would take a season. I started it about 3 weeks ago. It would probably take a season, but I'm not so sure you have to wait that long to plant. Might even take a couple seasons. So I'm just going to see how this works out by next spring. If we get some snow, that'll help things rot a little bit more. So I'm just going to go by the simple instruction that I've heard. Yeah, and apparently this is it's not a new thing, but it may not be an ancient thing either. It may not go back to the Middle Ages. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. But I think a lot of people will say, oh, it started in the 70s, 60s, and 70s with Mother Earth news and organic gardening and things like that. But I would wager to bet that it probably had a resurgence because somebody was doing some research and found it, and then it caught on. Here's the Swiss chard. It's made it through some really cold weather underneath the hoop house. And although they're not perfect, they're not sealed to the ground, they've worked. And I've been picking little pieces of the Swiss chard. See the holes in there? That's from the snails. And I don't think that should be an issue right now. But I'm going to put in some lettuce seeds today. That's about the only way I can figure out if they're still around, because once the seeds start to come up, they'll eat them. But yeah, the Swiss chard did pretty good. It's not spectacular, but it's alive and it's still growing, because every time I pick something off, a new leaf comes up. And the lettuce is still alive, picking little pieces off of that. Not much for a meal, but here's one plant here. This has been surviving here since April. The taste is fine. It's not bitter like you would think. Over time, you do have to be careful with lettuce because it becomes, the milky substance in its veins becomes latexy. And you don't want to eat that. But as long as you keep picking off the top, leave the big leaves alone for the most part, because that's where you'll see most of the latex. But if you pick from the heart, which I've been doing, it's been working out just fine. Like I said, not a meal fit for a king, but it's not nothing either. So, and then there's the other one right there. I'm gonna I'm going to dig in a little bit here, get some of those weeds out of there. We've got some shepherd's purse and some ground ivy that's growing in the cold weather underneath the hoop house. And that's gonna be my experiment, like I said before, to see if the snails are around, because if they are, as soon as those little tiny shoots come up, those buggers will be right in there. Just going to throw the weeds on top of the Hugelkulture mound. Add to that. That won't hurt it any. I'm going to, with my fingers, dig a little trough. And I'm not worried about digging it because these are shallow roots for the lettuce. It's not like you have to make extra space for carrots and such. These are non-GMO Bentley seeds. I think they're local. Let me double check. Let's see. Cambridge, New York. Huh, 16 Railroad Avenue. This will be the snail litmus test. Oh, just noticed the packaging is made in the USA too. It's always nice to see that. Gently cover. Oh my goodness, it's a snail. Look at this. They're still out. My God, you would think. I'm going to have to do some research on snail biology. Look at this. Jeez Louise. It just never ends. All right. I know they're here, but I'm still going to give it the old college try. I'm watering like this so that I don't knock all the seeds out of the trough, or flood it to the point where the seeds float up to the surface. Alright, even if it gets cold, that's a full bucket. So if anything, if the temperature gets down to freezing, it'll just get a skim of ice over the top. That's all I'm going to do for now. So that's the Butter Crunch lettuce, the new seeds, and the old, oh, what's that old one? I think that's an old Butter Crunch in there also, the two plants. And then we've got the Swiss chard here. I went and covered that. I wanted to give them some water because it's going to be warm today. I already put the hoses away for the season. I have to say I've neglected this because of other priorities, but I was happy to come out and see that things were still alive. Okay, so we'll see what happens. Put that to bed. It's going to be warm. The temperature will rise today, and apparently these simple little houses have made a definite difference because it has obviously kept the warmth up overnight. Otherwise, everything would have frozen. We've had some weather at night in the teens already, and we're supposed to get snow. And I'm not too worried about the snow because that will be like another layer of insulation. And so far the plastic is holding up. It's not leaking. There's no splits. This is what's left of the radish that I put in. Must have been back at the beginning of October. Let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, not too happy. I never did get back to, oh, snail. Snail ate that. Oh, I need to figure out something. I need something on a large scale to get rid of all these snails, because this is ridiculous. And it's not just a matter of putting down salt. I've had some really nice suggestions from people. I have used salt before. I put out the cans of beer. Someone else suggested citrus peels. I've done that. Doesn't seem to stop them. So obviously it's an infestation that I have to hit real hard and try to do it without using chemicals. But I may have to do something like that because this is just out of hand. Isn't it beautiful? Each time we get another cold snap, that's mustard. It's an heirloom variety. This can still be eaten. Some of these new ones here, I wouldn't touch these older ones. But every time we get a cold snap, they become more and more vivid in color. And, I mean, look at that. That's life. It's growing. There's some more there. Again, like I said, it's not a huge meal. This is bolted, so you really don't want anything to do with that. It's just going to be bitter. But these smaller ones, yeah, not a huge bounty, but it's still something. I'm pretty happy with it. And what do we got over here? I know you can, these are turnips. I know you can cook turnip greens, but I don't do well with a lot of heavy-duty greens like kale and things like that. I'm better with the lighter stuff. The root vegetables are fine. It's not really edible at this point, but this will just turn into green manure as the season goes on. But I just like seeing some green out here. I'm not going to eat those though. I don't digest those well. Some of us do, some of us don't. Those with the right pancreatic enzymes, just the way we're built. And look at this. This is sorrel. Now, sorrel is pretty popular in England and in Scotland. I believe it came from Scotland. Look at that, it's growing. But I tried it this year, and I had a review of it on another video quite a while ago, several months back. It is extremely bitter. If you like bitter things, sorrel is for you. If you don't, like me, then you're just gonna be puckering your lips and just trying to get it down. I think cream of sorrel soup is going to be on the menu. I think that's going to calm this down a little bit so that I can eat it, because it's, I mean, look at it. It's one of the big contenders. It's still out here after some really hard frost. We'll see what happens when it snows, since it comes from the highlands. And here we are with some edible chard. You know, you cook that long enough, it's not so bad. These small ones here, I wouldn't eat a leaf like that though. But these little guys that are coming up, you can make a little bit of a meal out of that. Not too much, but something. This big mess right here is from allowing it to go to seed, and I did collect an awful lot of seeds this past year. I'm really glad I did, because who knows what's going to happen. I'm just hoping that everybody pulls up their big boy and big girl pants, and we just carry on like we always have. We don't need to be threatened all the time with food shortages and such. But yeah, look at that. I mean, isn't that lovely to see? So, that's the garden update. And a bunch of moldy pumpkins. what'll happen with these is they will rot into the soil as the winter goes on and into the early spring, and then I'll get surprises. I'll get all kinds of plants coming up. They'll just reseed themselves. Well, everybody, thanks for joining me for this very simple and quick garden update. I'm still pretty impressed by what's still growing in the garden. I'm really happy about that. And as far as the snail problem goes, like I said earlier, that I've had a few suggestions. I've known some so-called remedies of my own throughout the years. Nothing's working on these things. I mean, I need to hit it with a bomb of some sort. If anybody's got a suggestion, I'd appreciate that. Well, take care all, and thanks for joining me. It's Irene from the Field Guide. See you next time.